Hello again. Today I am posting another special drawing. This one I have done using Derwent Inktense pencils, the 36 set. And I have combined the Inktense pencils with Faber Castell classic colored pencils. This drawing is special because it marks my 1-year anniversary of drawing and uploading to YouTube. My first upload was an Inktense picture of my eldest son who was posing with the AA Division Championship trophy that he and his teammates won. Well, this year, playing AAA, he did it again. And just like last year, I failed to actually get a decent photo of him in his accomplishment. So I should mention, I'm working with by far one of the worst reference photos imaginable. So, if the drawing sucks, that's my excuse. Another special thing about the drawing is it will hopefully show how much I have improved as an artist over the past year. Hopefully. Now on to the drawing. I attempted to capture in video how I apply the Inktense pencils and then activate them using a watered paintbrush. But someone had modified the settings on my camera, which introduced a nasty 60 Hz flicker. This was due to adjustments on the video settings and shutter speed. If you're curious to know who that someone was, my sons have their own YouTube channel, located at Relic Film Kids, where they do Lego builds and stop motion. Now, if I can only get them to use their own camera. The photo, similar to last year's, was very busy, so I had to use a fair number of trace lines. Because of contrast issues, it was difficult to nail down many of the important features. I start out by layering the blue Inktense pencils for the shirt and hat. The 36 set comes with iris blue, sea blue, peacock blue, iron blue, and bright blue, as well as a deep indigo. Ink black is being used for the trophy case, field and felt green for the grass. I started to do the shirt sleeves with deep indigo, but later you'll see I've changed to violet, which was a better match with the reference photo. The Inktense can generate some really bright colors. It is best to set up a color tab when you are working with these. The colors the pencils look, the color they go on dry, and the color they change to when activated by water are quite different. So I usually have a color tab or some scrap watercolor paper around for testing out the colors. When using the Inktense, you just want to rub lightly and apply a small amount of pigment to the paper. Then apply a watered brush over top. I usually keep my pigment away from the trace lines, that way I can use the brush to push the pigment out to the line. I usually don't use a lot of water when activating the pigment, but if you don't activate at all, it can sometimes be activated at a later time, often when you don't want it to. So make sure you activate all the pigment. Some people go crazy with the water. I tend to be a little bit more conservative. I've used charcoal gray for the pants as well as the running lanes, bark and saddle brown for the trees, and for the leaves or foliage, I've started with the lighter tones of green and slowly worked my way darker. The objective was really to darken up the background compared to last year's drawing. It is much easier to do backgrounds like this using the Inktense blocks, and I do have a 72 set, but I wanted to limit myself to the 36 set of pencils and of course fill in the details with the Faber Castell classic colored pencils. Once I have a good base layer of Inktense done, I then move on to the Faber Castells. Now you could just do the entire drawing with Inktense. You can keep layering the Inktense to give the depth and contrast that you want, and for the details, just wet a small brush and apply that right to the pencil lead to activate the pigment and use the brush for the more detailed work. Obviously the blocks are better to use for this purpose, but you can still use the pencils that way. You can also sand or grate the pencil ends and make a bit of paste to work with. And if you wanted, for the final layers, you could just use the pencils dry. You're not going to get the intense colors, but the final work will still look good. I'm just adding in the personal trophy, which was done using sun yellow and sienna gold, and then darkening up the face, I believe with baked earth, some bark above the eyes, and charcoal gray and ink black beneath the hat. I've just lightly traced in the lips or mouth with a thin layer of fuchsia, Now my last few comments on the Inktense pencils. This set of 36 cost me just under $45 Canadian, which I do consider good value. I've used them on several drawings now, and the set looks mostly untouched. I do notice they are generally priced about $2 a pencil, but if you're patient, wait for a sale, and you should be able to pick them up cheaper. Now for the Faber Castell Classic Colored Pencils. This is the 48 set. I got them from a local art store for around $30. These are equivalent to the Faber Castell Polychromos Baby Brother pencils. I have caused some confusion before calling them the Art Grip pencils, but they are not. The Art Grip are somewhere in between these pencils and the Polychromos. They are hexagonal in shape, which I didn't like before, but I've changed my mind. Yes, I'm allowed to do that. I am also inherently clumsy, so having pencils that don't roll off the table is nice. I reviewed these in my budget pencil review and my revisit of that review with a drawing of Doctor Strange, and really no complaints with these pencils. With the exception that some colors, it's hard to get dark tones, and they are not labeled with the colors, just numbers. If you use them enough, you start to remember which colors to use just by looking at the pencils, so that's not a huge issue. It is best to supplement the classic pencils with a few Polychromos pencils or even Prismacolor Premier pencils. I'm using the Prismacolor Premier Black and White in some areas of the drawing. I could have stuck with the Faber Castell Black, but the Faber Castell White is basically useless for lightening, although it is quite effective for burnishing or blending. I have yet to do any color fast tests with these. I will at some point in the future, but not right now as we have very little sunlight where I live. I started working from left to right, adding in the details with the classic pencils. The base colors are already done with the Inktense, so I'm just adding details that I feel were easier to add with a pencil rather than a brush. The Inktense have done a great job of filling in the tooth of the paper without damaging it. After finishing the trophy, I start to work a bit on the face. Because the face is so small, I really didn't try to fill in details with the Inktense. This has left the face looking a bit freaky and also not at all like my son. So yes, this is where the moment of panic sets in as you realize the next 5 minutes of drawing could make the last 5 hours a complete waste of time. As I started to fill in the details of the cheeks and the mouth, it did start to look more like the reference image and my son. I did have to modify the drawing because of the poor quality reference image, and the result has my son looking a little more Caucasian than he is and a little bit older. I felt the most important part was capturing the smile, and I think I got about 70% of that. He was a pretty happy little guy that day. From time to time, you will see me darken up some of the background using the Inktense, generally applying the paintbrush directly to the pencil lead. You need to be careful with this as it can introduce very intense colors onto your drawing. I do this to the trees and the sky, grass, and the bullpen. I will often switch my focus from the main image in an attempt to gradually darken up the background, and I find it more enjoyable to draw this way. I then get to work on the hat and the shirt. This is where I probably could have saved myself a lot more time by layering more with the Inktense and leaving the finer details for the colored pencil. But for some reason, my hands were shakier than normal, probably from shoveling snow all week, so I didn't want to risk making too much of a mess of the shirt, especially with the logo and writing. The 48 set of classic pencils has a great selection of blues for creating contrast and depth in the shirt and hat. Any areas that I need to lighten up, I use the Prismacolor Premier White. Although I spent a lot of time working on the shirt, it isn't difficult work. I'm only pressing lightly with the pencils, and most of the effort is in getting the shading correct and cleaning up the logo and writing. After each pass through, I feel better about how the shirt is looking, but I also feel I could darken things up a bit more, especially around the lettering. I forgot to mention the paper I was using. This was the Fabriano Studio Watercolor 140 pound hot press paper. This is great paper, works well with Inktense and colored pencils, and it holds up quite well. The paper is a bit pricey. I believe even on sale I'm paying about $1 a sheet for the 11 by 14 inch pad. The last part is a personal trophy. I've used the gold, dark gray and some brown for the darker sections of the trophy, bright yellow and white for the overexposed areas, and just touches of black on the face, folds in the shirt, and the heavily shadowed areas. With the trophy done, it's on to the final touch-ups. So here, I'm just trying to add a little more contrast to the image to give it more depth, trying to add a bit more of a three-dimensional effect to it. And the last part, I break out the Inktense again to finish up the background and the trees. My goal with the trees is to make them look a little bit better, but at the same time, I don't want to draw too much attention to them. I really want the focus to be on the boy with the championship trophy and not to be distracted by the background. I hope you enjoy the drawing, and if I compare this to last year's Inktense only drawing, I'm hoping you can see that I have in fact improved during the year. It is said that if I continue doing this for another 6 years, then I will be a professional artist. Something to look forward to. Now last year I took part in an art competition which required me to do a drawing in about 3 hours. I would like to compete again this year and hopefully come away with a prize. In preparation, I plan on doing a couple of speed drawings, constraining myself to a 3-hour time limit. So my next drawing, I'd like to focus on more of a fantasy drawing using colored pencil and either no background or a quickly sketched in Inktense background. That's all for now. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.